We are back in person at the table again with Joe Diamond, who's the CEO of Axonius, which is an asset intelligence company. The asset intelligence platform that unifies data across devices, identities, applications, cloud systems, software, all kinds of stuff. So very interesting. Joe, welcome to MTS.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah, so you guys have some exciting news from earlier this week, right? You guys released the Axonius AI agent, the Axonius MCP server. So can you tell us a little bit about the recent release and what it means for AI agents and cybersecurity use cases? Because cybersecurity is like the big news of the week.
When is it not?
Yeah.
That doesn't seem to stop. It's like every day, it's just continuously evolving every moment. But yeah, we continue to evolve with that as well. So probably a good place to start is asset intelligence and what that really is. So asset intelligence is just solving this key notion of making sure that every organization in the world understands what its environment looks like, right? So what are its endpoints, its networks, its devices, its printers, like everything across the board, software applications, SaaS applications, and so forth. When we talk about how it is that it's important to extend to AI agent coverage, that is another notion for us, is like, how do we make sure that every organization understands where every single AI agent is, but also how does it correlate and how can it touch all the different device types and all the different asset classes that we just talked about? How is it interfacing with your software? How is it interfacing with your endpoints and so forth? So we announced and we launched our AI agent capabilities to make sure that we built the foundation for ensuring that you could secure that coverage.
Yeah.
So tell us more about like the fundamental product and business model of the company for our audience.
Yeah, sure. So it is all about, like I said, making sure that you understand where everything is. So our go-to-market is primarily engaging, with the security audience. They have a really big problem that they don't understand what their environment looks like. The thing that I hear most typically from the CISO is that they feel like they have pretty good confidence, like of maybe about 50 to 60% of their environment, but 40% of it is kind of like in the dark. They don't know exactly what's out there, and this has actually, been driven further by, if I have 40% that I don't know about, and I have all of these AI agents out there interacting with things that I don't have visibility into, that's just more exposure, right? That's just extending like what my attack surface looks like. So our primary engagement is around helping folks understand what's out there. And then also, how do you drive action and how do you bring that additional stuff that you don't have covered under control? So you bring it intent so you can actually harden your attack surface.
Right. So is it true that a lot of organizations underestimate the amount of assets that they have?
Almost every single one does.
Right. So is this is this just because there's like so many like very specific assets that just haven't been like categorized, or like what is the root cause behind this?
It's because it's an incredibly hard problem to solve. So it's like, most organizations might try to answer this question at specific layers. So it's not specifically an endpoint problem. It's not specifically a network problem. The reality is it spans both of those things. But you're not going to gain complete visibility from just endpoints, and you're not going to gain complete visibility from just networks. So you have to have sort of like an agnostic layer that sits on top of it, that integrates with all of your systems to tell you everything everywhere. Yeah. So if you don't have that, you're just hoping for the best, more or less.
Sure.
What exactly counts as an asset in this context?
There's some variance from organization to organization. A container can be an asset. A printer can be an asset. Your laptop is an asset. Your phone is an asset. In some organizations, like when you look at traditional asset management, this chair might be an asset, right? That's a non-digital version of an asset. But in our case, it's basically anything that is digital, has an IP address, can communicate, with the world. Maybe it doesn't communicate. There's variance, but that is by and large the general definition.
Yeah.
Right.
So
go on. Does your business extend to like retail, for example, and where there are lots of physical assets to be secured?
It depends on what you mean by a physical asset, but we do have capabilities in the IoT and OT range as well. So like when you run into, manufacturing or healthcare scenarios as an example, like those aren't necessarily traditional, endpoints per se. Like you can't install an agent on them, but they are connected to the network that is a threat exposure, that, potential that is a component of your attack surface. And you obviously want to make sure that you have visibility over how that's communicating and what's being used across the board for those as well.
Yeah. So what about the whole category of digital assets? What counts as a digital asset?
Yeah, I mean, it's everything that's like connected or non-connected. Non-connected could be things that are like air-gapped or segmented networks that aren't allowed to communicate with anything, but you still need that visibility of like what those assets are as well. So it's basically anything that's a connected or unconnected digital device is a part of your footprint.
So cybersecurity has become super salient like in the last couple of months because of Mythos and because of foundational advances in AI models capability to do both offensive and defensive cyber. So have you noticed, for example, like an increase in the amount of cyber attacks to defend against in the last stretch of time?
It continues to evolve. And the thing that's probably changed the most is the speed by which these things are moving. So like the new industry buzzword that everyone is using from like a marketing perspective is machine speed. I'm sure you guys are hearing about that constantly from vendors. And like the general consensus and the expectation is that now the defensive side has to be able to move at machine speed as well. So if anything, it's just more, how do we move faster and how do we move from this history where we've been mostly responding to threats, what's called inline. It's basically like we have like a triage list of, hey, here's all of our issues, and one by one you kind of go through and you have someone gather forensics, do a response to each one of those things. You can't, if you have thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, if not potentially millions of incidents, are you going to be able to do that through manual curation? So what's changing is it's forcing our hands in moving to like real automation and real automated response.
Yeah. What kind of digital assets are the most vulnerable or prone to cyber attacks? And then like, what about the issue of like what assets are actually connected to each other? Because I'm sure that also impacts like if you're being hacked, if a hacker can move to a different asset affects something else.
It's not really a matter of like most or least. It's because like, I mean, they always say that the weakest point in the kill chain is the user, right? So it's like, I don't have to actually own the device if I can own you and I can own your password. You are the weak link in that attack chain, right? So they're always going to go after that first. But now with what's happening, with AI, it's just going to expose additional vulnerabilities everywhere across every single attack surface. So it just gives them additional threat vectors to target in addition to the social engineering attacks that they're going to go after you with, right? So just picture the attack surface is getting exponentially larger and larger and larger. I have more to protect. I have an attack surface that I haven't historically understood. I have to deal with this stuff now. So that's another part that we focus on is what's called the exposure management part of our business. How do I make sure that I have an understanding of all the vulnerabilities that exist across all of my different assets, and then I can actually adequately respond to them as well.
That reminds me kind of the XKCD comic that's like, I have it pulled up, a crypto nerd's imagination. His laptop's encrypted. Let's build $1 million cluster to crack it. No good. It's 4096-bit RSA. Blast, our evil plan is foiled. And then what would actually happen, his laptop's encrypted. Drug him and hit him with this $5 wrench until he tells us the password.
That's
Got
pretty much the case. Yes.
Yes. So,
and I don't know that will ever change, by the way. Like we will always be, as humans and human nature, like the weak link in any kind of attack chain.
Right. How does Axonius help defend against that as well?
I mean,
or is it just kind of impossible?
It's not that it's necessarily impossible. Maybe I would view it as improbable, but not impossible. Look, it starts at the end of the day. Cybersecurity has always been about fundamentals. It's always been about getting the fundamentals right and making sure that you do the basics. Like you get up in the morning, you wake up, you brush your teeth, you do your hair. Like those are the basics of like getting ready for the day. The same is true from a cybersecurity perspective. Like you need to have the right controls in the right places. And if you are going to allow yourself to not have those right controls in the right places, you're going to get popped.
Yeah. So what were your broad thoughts, I guess, on the recent attack against Hugging Face by this OpenAI model?
That it's not particularly surprising, to be blunt. I don't think everyone I'm talking to isn't particularly surprised either. It's like as these models...
I agree, actually.
Yeah. It's like as they've grown more and more sophisticated, they're going to find creative ways of breaking out of whatever safeguards and whatever controls it is that we have in place. And that's exactly what's happened in the Hugging Face context. So it's in line with exactly what we thought was going to happen, is that it's going to create problems. And it did.
Why do you think neither OpenAI nor Hugging Face were able to successfully defend against this for some time?
When you have, so it sounds like the dwell time, it was like going on for quite a while before they actually
like days.
I think it was even more, potentially like a week.
Wow.
So. Yeah. So it was an extended period of time, at least last I heard. So in terms of the why, like think about when you are a sophisticated threat actor. In this case, this is an AI agent. AI agents are going to know, as a sophisticated version of an attacker, how to hide its tracks, right? Like that's what good threat actors do. They find ways to hide their tracks, right? To leverage known users to look or impersonate or appear as if they are a normal user and so forth, right? So there are all sorts of different tactics that sophisticated deployments of agents and models are going to be able to use in order to basically obfuscate.
So how are you thinking about this at Axonius? Like with your agent, how is your agent going to, distinguish like a potential impersonation of a person versus a person?
For us, we just look at it in the context of an NHI, non-human identity. Like, it's just total visibility, making sure that you have the right safeguards in place, making sure that you have the right sort of like network segmentation in place. So like when things do go wrong, the amount, the blast radius, the things that can be compromised or minimized. But again, what is that? Fundamentals, right? So you kind of have to accept to some degree, like some of these things are going to happen, and you're just taking mitigations and steps to reduce the impact when they do happen.
Do you think that we're headed into a period of some amount of time where cyber offenders have an advantage over cyber defenders? Like, are a lot of people just going to get hacked for the foreseeable future? Or companies, yes.
I think so. I think the offensive side is going to be more sophisticated than the defensive side for quite some time, and that tends to be the case also on the business side, because businesses take a little bit of time to figure out like, how do I adopt this technology? How do I deploy this technology? The CISO community doesn't even have a full understanding in terms of like, what are the different tool options that I have to layer on that are going to even help me from an AI security perspective. So what are they doing? They're turning to the platform players right now, like the large ones, the CrowdStrikes and the Palo Altos of the world, to say, I have this suite of things that I bought from you. Is it going to help me solve these problems? It will help me solve part of these problems, but there's going to be a part of it that it won't. They don't know how to fully fill the part that it won't. So it's going to take some time. It's going to take some learning, and that is the case with every single attack surface, right?
Yep.
Mobile devices are introduced in a meaningful way. iOS as a mobile operating system, that was a new attack surface, right? So you saw a rise of different types of attacks until we got to a place in which that ecosystem was effectively better hardened.
Yeah, historically, like how long do these periods take, and do you even see with like, I guess the first few like ChatGPT models when they were first released, that there was any sort of spike in like cybercrime?
I think it's more recently, like in the last 6 months, that you see the sophistication in the models to the degree that they've become quite prolific. Like from an attacker perspective, the time it's highly variant, because who would have expected even 12 months ago that AI would have moved as quickly as it has? If we were having this conversation 12 months ago, it would not be in the same tone. It would be more in like the theory of the potential. Usually it's been like, oh, hey, like this is going to be, an 18 to 24 to 36 month horizon. This ended up being like a 6 month horizon. So like the rules of the game are feel very different right now. It feels like very turned on its head. So hopefully it's a short horizon where it's like 3 to 6 months. We'll kind of catch up and we'll have a better understanding in terms of like, hey, we actually have to have layers of defenses. We have to have, identity controls, endpoint controls, network controls, an agnostic layer that sits across all of them, that is API based, that brings it all together. And like those things together are our defense in depth that are going to help us harden and protect against AI. But there's no reference architecture for what this looks like right now, right? There's a lot of opinions. There's a lot of different ideas in terms of what good looks like. It's going to take a little bit of time.
So what would your prescription be for enterprises that are trying to secure themselves right now?
Don't make the assumptions of thinking that just the platform solutions that you have in place are going to be sufficient. Do the exploration of like actually engaging and figuring out like what your problems are, because it's not just an identity problem, it's not just a network problem, it's not just an endpoint problem. We have to do the traditional approach of looking at this as defense in depth, and like making sure that we have layers upon layers of controls that are actually going to serve as our mitigations. Like that is the prescription, and it's not that prescriptive, right? It's not step 1, step 2, step 3, tie your shoes sort of situation. We're going to learn together. The industry's learning together. There's no super clear formula for this right now.
Yeah. So what is like the sort of class of cyber crimes that happen these days? Is it like attacks on data, stealing data, or is it attacks on, is it closer to theft? Like what do we see the most of?
I mean, there's variance there as well. I mean, it's everything from, I'm going to pop you as a user from a social engineering perspective, ransomware type of attacks, like just to extort for money, like those tend to be, pretty common. But now there's a lot of conversations that are happening on intellectual property theft, right? Like,
Right.
real legitimate IP is a part of these conversations as well. So it more or less runs the gamut. That's not going to change, right? It's just going to be the volume and the sophistication of the attacks gets better, more sophisticated, more robust, and it's you're going to be dealing more with even like the 0-day type attacks as vulns are exposed on things that have been vulns for a very long time that we just didn't know about.
Yeah, totally. So I guess in terms of like types of industries, companies, I assume that it's like older infrastructure that is more at risk. Older sort of like, like web, internet infrastructure, smaller companies maybe as well. I'm very concerned about
Nonprofits and stuff.
Yeah, the idea of like small companies and nonprofits being targeted. So how do you weigh all these different risks?
I don't know if that's necessarily all that true because, a lot of the even sophisticated security programs are going to have very significant issues trying to track and measure a lot of these and gain visibility and controls over these types of attacks. And there's more to lose for these larger organizations theoretically than a smaller organization or a nonprofit, right? So if I am a sophisticated threat actor, like what do I have to gain by going after the nonprofit, right? Like is it just for making a mockery of them, or I just like agree with like their specific initiatives? Like what is the motive, right? It's like whereas like the large brands with deep pockets, there's just clearly a heck of a lot more motivation and a heck of a lot more there and the why. And you can just as frankly, easily, put yourself in a situation where you can take advantage of their security posture as well. Because again, even if you have a very large security team that is relatively sophisticated, you're not fully like ready to deal with this situation. And you can have a conversation with any CISO in the world right now. They're having the same conversation as we are having right now in the exact same way.
So what should AI labs and governments be doing in order to help cyber defenders out like as much as possible in this moment?
Is this the speculation that regulation is the way of addressing this problem?
Well, you could say that the best thing the government could do is get out of the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's honestly, it's unclear. It's a gray area. Is there a right answer? I don't know. What do you think?
I think it would be helpful for like labs to do things like Project Glasswing, which is what Anthropic did, where they gave enterprises access to Mythos before other people.
Yeah. I mean, in that particular case, that worked because like that was the first real example of the models being sophisticated enough to that degree to create that sort of chaos or that sort of problem. But now as like the models become more widespread, where they're all that sophisticated, how do you stop it like when the cat's already out of the bag? Because then the threat actors from like an open source model perspective are going to have similar capabilities, but then the defenders don't necessarily have the capabilities. Right. So it's like that's why like there's so much gradient in like that gray area there because it's not that clear. You know what I mean? Like the theory is right. I agree with you, but the actual execution of it is pretty tough. And like you could go back to that sarcastic comment that I was making about like, oh, is this about like regulation? Like, is that the right approach either? That is also very unclear.
So I guess the other end of this would be like just accelerate open source and then sort of like if we, like put the same effort as Chinese labs are behind our open source models domestically. Do you think that would be a better like solution from a cybersecurity perspective?
Maybe. Yeah, I'm very split.
Very split. Yeah, I think it's probably the better thing to do is to let that happen and to let the momentum kind of like move forward organically on that, and like we'll see where it goes. And we tend to, as a world, as an economy, as a capitalistic society, identify that there's big opportunities here, and then vendors typically step in to help solve these specific challenges and problems. We come up with reference architectures to address these problems, and it's a little hairy for a period of time while we figure out exactly what it is that we want to do as an industry together to solve these things. I mean, that's how it's always worked before. You could argue that this technology is so prolific, and it is, that maybe this requires a different model, but time will tell.
Yeah. Are there any other companies in the cybersecurity space that you're watching?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of interesting folks in the industry that are doing a lot of very interesting things to sort of, but everyone it's very hypothesis oriented in terms of every vendor is going to have to make the argument in terms of like, this is the best in the most right place in the stack to solve this AI challenge. Now, again, my argument is that it's not going to be any one layer. It's going to be multiple together, hence the defense in depth argument. But it's going to be an interesting battle of education and evangelism and sort of like side-by-side co-developing the right approaches and the reference architectures to get to a place where we actually get to a place where we feel directionally okay.
Yeah, do you see just more cybersecurity spending in general being the way that we're trending?
I don't think we're seeing more cybersecurity spending yet. And I think it's largely because they're not ready to allocate the dollars because they don't have the confidence that any specific tool or any specific solution is going to actually help them solve this problem. So they're sticking with the, hey, I paid all these dollars to these platform players or my, Microsoft bundle or whatever the case may be. Like, let's see what I can cover with that. What they don't know is like, is that going to give me 30% coverage or 50% coverage, right? So, and then what do I do about that other piece? So
Yeah.
I think once the cat's out of the bag in terms of like, hey, this is sort of like the model, the reference architecture that we all want to like standardize off of, then you'll see the security dollars just go up and to the right.
Totally.
Or reallocation, some combination thereof.
Right. Well, before we go, is there anything else you want to say about Axonius, about recent product announcements, recent product releases? Anything you're excited about for the near future?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just excited for the progress that we're making with our customers in terms of, making asset intelligence be AI native and AI first. Getting to a place in which we have agentic approaches, on top of our platform, externalizing all of the asset context data that we have that is only available, to us via MCP as well. So you can actually consume that as a part of your frontier models as well.
Yeah.
It's an exciting time. It truly is unprecedented, and we have a lot of upside ahead of us as an industry, and it's going to be fun.
Yeah, well, we're excited for you. Thank you so much, Joe, for coming on.
We're glad you're being proactive about this and thinking about this, very proactively.
Thank you. Pleasure, guys.
Absolutely. We'll be right back.
We'll be right back with MTS.